It was good. Peace. So, peace, everybody. Um, I'm Satori Sales. We're going to get into some more insights in reference to the soul to soul conversation. So, what I'm going to do today, well, this morning, is introduce some of you into the element effect, how it affects our relationships. So, inside the living soul numerology system, we refer to it as the soul elements. And so, while everybody is getting ready to pop on, we'll go ahead and set it. So, feel free to ask questions and things like that. If I don't ask it while I'm just doing it while I'm presenting towards the end, I'll try to look at it and scroll and see, make sure I ask, or I might randomly, pick a question, but definitely feel free to engage and highlight different things that comes to mind, and then I can see it so we can make sure everything's going smooth. Um, Everyone that's aligned in anything, if you see anyone trolling, go ahead and just delete their comments and stuff out so that we can kind of keep everything on a certain vibe. Y'all know how I roll. But so what we're going to do today is focus on the relationship love elements, and what I'm going to do is actually a couple, and I have their numbers, but of course they're going to be anonymous. But I'm not going to do like a full reading. But what I want to do is just be able to highlight as an example, so that way some of you that are listening and following, you can catch on and then visualize what I'm talking about in reference to the numbers as it connects to their soul elements. Okay, so some of you that are just hopping on, some of you that are maybe new to some of these soul to soul conversation lives that I do here on YouTube and also inside my Patreon, which is under the Patreon. Just Google Patreon, Living Soul, and you'll see me pop up. And so you're definitely welcome there and join the membership because I go way more extensively in a lot of different things and a variety of stuff centering around the Living Soul numerology system in terms of life lessons, insights and forecasting, things about your soul element, insight about relationship numerology, and so on. So, just to bring everybody to speed, we know relationships are driven by energy that's behind them. Energy precedes reality. And so we capture this by acknowledging, and we trace it to the three primary gender energies that we refer to as the masculine energy, the androgynous energy, and the feminine energy. And those energies takes different positions that we acknowledge as dominant, neutral, or submissive. So the masculine can take on a dominant position or a neutral position or a submissive position. The androgynous could do the exact same thing. It could take on a dominant, neutral, submissive position. And then the feminine can take on a dominant, neutral, or submissive position. For more insight on that, definitely you want to go to my Patreon, check out the book, The Psychology of Feminine Energy, The Spectrums, and then there'll be some other different releases of books talking about the masculine and the androgynous for more insight if you're into spiritual psychology and getting a metaphysical understanding that's based on principles, not based on theory and things like that, but actually based on universal principles as it applies inside our social context as we exchange with each other. So, in reference to relationships, we talked about the energy, right? But then we also, on the energetic side, we acknowledge these elements. You and I are is of air, we are of water, we are of fire, we are of metal, right? And we are of earthwood. Okay, so because of that, we all have built inside of us aspects of elements. Now, energetically speaking, some of us score more or less, or in a balanced space with those elements functioning through us as we exchange with other souls. So, relationship speaking, when we begin to come together, whether it's one or more, what happens is the scores changes, obviously, right? So it's this group together has more earthwood. This group has more water. Or in this relationship, when you come together, y'all have a lot of air. When y'all come together, you have a lot of air and fire, and so on and so forth. Let me know if that makes sense to you in the comment. Okay. And so the same thing, energetically speaking, inside the relationships, when we come together, as y'all know, I've been covering, talking about the masculine, androgynous, and feminine. You'd be like, this got a lot of feminine. you know, or this has a lot of masculine, this has a lot of androgynous, or this has a nice balanced blend of them all. And we can look at the positions. Oh, this relationship is more submissive oriented, or this relationship is more dominant driven, or this relationship operates more in neutrality. And based on all that, it affects the relationship battery, okay, that it generates. And so we know the relationship battery has an aspect where it has to what? Have some polarity in there. So when that polarity is blunted with too much sameness and so forth, we begin to see the battery start to go and malfunction. And we start to see things affect the sexual chemistry, the social chemistry, and a variety of other different things, just based off of the polarity lens as we look into the relationships. So when we come from the relationship energetics, from the living soul numerology, we look at it from a multiple different lens. The polarity lens is just one. We have the cognitive compatibility as another lens. We have the archetype gravity relations as another lens. So there's a variety of different lenses that we can look at. We look at the element balancing factor, right? We look at the self-awareness factor inside relationships. So, and I'll hit that stuff on another time. And so these all these different factors begins to affect us. Why do they affect us? Because we all project parts of ourselves inside relationships, whether it's of the light side of us or the dark side of us, or when we come together, it can shift us to have more dark exchange, quote unquote, shadow exchange, or more light exchange. So, this is why it's good to have these insights to understand what is the collective chemistry. What does it generate when we operate together? You know, what does that look like? What is the likelihood for certain things to come? What would be that energetic tone that gives a rise for certain realities to be experienced more likely in our relationship versus other realities to be experienced? So today I want to center around the elements, and we have these 5 different elements that we look at inside uh, these this style of numerology, the living soul numerology system. So we have the earth wood, as I mentioned, we have the water, we have the metal, we have the air, and we have the fire. So keep that in mind. And so we talk about that for, so just real simple. So a relationship, if we talk about the earth wood, that's a sense of connectedness, right? Or that's a sense of stability and growth. Relationships need that, right? When we talk about the water, that's referring to the bonding aspect, the flexibility, or the level of emotional exchange. When you look at the metal, the guidance, the structure, the clarity, the boundaries. When we look at air, we look at the communication, the intellectual compatibility. We in an aspect for space. When we look at fire, we look at for the passion, motivation, and chemistry. So all these aspects that is listed is not separate from none of our social or our romantic interests with each other. They're playing out whether we realize it or not or acknowledge it. And based off the score of our soul elements, gives us a whole likelihood where that relationship will tilt in more favor in the expression inside of what it is. And so these soul elements, what they do is they help us see what we give and receive inside relationships more or less of. We'll be more prone to give more of. If someone has a lot of earth wood, they're more than likely going to give a lot of different aspects of the earth wood into their relationship. If someone is lacking earth wood inside themselves, then it kind of makes sense because we see a polarity aspect kicks in. And it's like, oh, this person's earth wood is able to make up for what I'm deficient in the earth wood, right? Or I have to work harder at to embody aspects or energetics alignment of the earth with nature, and that applies to all the other elements and so forth. Okay, and so when you look at that, I'm still following. Yes, so yes, go ahead and leave comments. I see y'all. All right, and so then when we talk about the elements, we it also gives us insight uh, into the psychology behind this. And I like to call it, energy psychology, because these are the elements affecting the psychology behind our persona, right? So there's a psychological connection to the earth wood, to the water, to the metal, to the air, and to the fire. All right. And so these elements also helps us to acknowledge, to recognize behavioral gaps, right? Some things might be obvious, some things might be hidden, but we can look at it energetically and be like, boom, here's a particular gap, right? It also can identify the emotional gaps or possible clashing or sources of tension, and then also sources of strength. Okay. And so that's what these elements just inside themselves, what it helps us really do. A lot of times when I'm sitting down and consulting and breaking down people's relationships, a lot of times I pivot quickly to the elements because the elements just gives a quick boom, 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 a quick insight. And matter of fact, we also have a relationship analyzer element score product for people that actually want to, get that and purchase so they can kind of get a quick read to analyze what their element scores are once they know this soul profile. Okay, so of course, so there's metrics and things behind it. So this is not based off of an opinion or something like that. It's actually there's a math supporting it, but giving you a nice commentary or certain insights to help you guide your relationship, help improve, help acknowledge certain things that might could become an issue, so that way you can lessen that effect. Okay, and so but also these elements also highlight what you and I's relationship thrives on or what starves it. Okay. And so this is the interesting thing what it does. So when we look at that, so I have an anonymous couple and their numbers, some of you that are familiar inside the Living Soul Numerati system, their numbers are, and his numbers are 4454. Her numbers are 4825. You can hear real fast, the number four jumps out a lot. Okay, so real quick, when I talk about the gender energy, this relationship right here, if y'all are listening, uh, their relationship is very feminine. They have a very feminine dynamic in their relationship. Now, you heard me do other uh, relationship profiles, and the one of the recent I did was Bam and Asia Wilson, and they're basketball players. I don't know who they are, WNBA and NBA. Great couple. Now, they have their relationship is more masculine dominant. So now I'm covering these individuals right here. They are more feminine dominant. They have more a feminine flow inside their relationship. Now, I'm not going to spend time to talk about how that really looks and stuff for and go down the rabbit hole of that, but the feminine. So there's a lot of what receptiveness. There is there's an aspect in the relationship where they want to feel rooted, right? And whatever their interest is, and if things are not going its way, it's going to resist. So there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of ideally it should be a lot of joint nurturing, joint validating type of vibe to that relationship. If it's not, then some things to explore. There's probably some shadows are intermingling more than what the light is of it. Um, yeah, someone said this should be a prerequisite before dating, marriage, and so absolutely. Can we all give absolutely? I like what she just said. This should be a prerequisite before dating, marriage, etc. Like yes, yes, absolutely. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to spark a movement to help bring this understanding out. So definitely share this live because this is stuff is real, it's measurable, and we can catch on. So the numbers, okay, the numbers are 4454. 4454 is his numbers. Her numbers are 4825. Her numbers are 4825. And as I was highlighting based off these numbers, we quickly jump out and see that this relationship is very feminine centric. They have a very feminine centric relationship. And then we look at the position of their energy, is looking at it real quick. I can see they have a lot of neutral. Okay. So this relationship and then they score very low in the masculine. Actually only score like a 1 in the masculine. So there's less likelihood to have any of this type of masculine input. It says, well, what about him? Yes, he's a man, but energetically speaking, he doesn't have any masculine energy. Any of the masculine things that exude from him will come from his 5, which is an androgynous energy. It's now that 5 is very self-determined, so it has a lot of strong quote unquote masculine traits, but he's not coming from a psychological masculine mindset. Even though, brother, no respect to you, even though you might think you are, but if you really look at what really harmonizes with you is really coming from the feminine aspect. Okay. And so, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's one thing we're trying to get across to everybody to understand is because sometimes we get so caught up in roles and things have been dictated to us in the, I like to refer as the old paradigm in relating. It's like, well, the man's supposed to be this and do this and do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And then his energetic makeup, even though he is a man, even though bioenergetically speaking, he should exude certain qualities. So we're not dismissing that. But we got to understand like what moves and how he goes about it. So a man's supposed to lead. Okay, he will lead, but he will lead from the feminine energetic space. How does that look? One, from the feminine energy is very mindful how to attract what it needs. So it's going to lead to setting environments and conditions to invite and attract what it needs. Versus with the masculine, just going to go ahead and push the charge and try to rally everyone to go in a certain direction. Different approaches, different mentality. But if you're only educated or oriented or indoctrinated into one way, then you might dismiss the quote unquote, in this example, this man's quality of how he leads. He might be more collaborative before he just goes and just do things. He might try to build a consensus first before he makes a decision. He might be looking for buy-in first before he makes a decision as a man to lead as a man, but he's coming from the feminine orientation. Let me know if that makes sense, if you will. So where the masculine is like, I don't give a damn about the validation of others. This is the direction we're going to go. I might get a little bit of consensus by getting communication where it is, but this is what the marker is, and we're going to press forward. Whether the environment is conducive for us to move forward or not, we're going to make it happen. Where the feminine is going to look at it and be like, that's working a little bit, let's be a little more patient, let's try to get some things in place, the conditions, and then try to make a move. So there's a different approach. They're all are necessary, but we got to figure out the key word I like to use. It's not about compromise. When we talk about energetically, it's about interplay. It's about being able to counterbalance. It's being able to, in the different areas in our lives. So to get a little more different areas of different sections in the relationship part, where he or she might take on more of a masculine type of mentality or a feminine mentality or an androgynous mentality. Just depends on that particular area. So I'm not going to hit that's a whole nother layer in things when we talk about relationship numerology. But just to get everyone, what I'm trying to get across is that we can come from a different energetic space and still function in a particular role, but it might look different versus what we've been programmed in expectation. Okay. And so sometimes we might be discounting people, or we might be making decisions and moving in a different direction in relationships or canceling relationships because you're looking for things to be overly defined, identified in a certain way. And that's not so. That's not so. And those times are dying in relationships. And people that are wrestling with it will continue to falter. But people are expanding and understanding and bringing a level of more fluidity and more of a what? Feminine influence on the macro aspect in relationships, because primarily things be more masculine dominant. Here's the rule, this is what you do this, you do that, you do that. And there's there's minimal flexibility or things like that. And so as we can see in certain divorce rates, we can see in the unmentioned, rates, we can see in the failure rates and the collapsing of the relationships overall. So that means nature is trying to signal to us there's something wrong, pause, look at it, acknowledge what's real versus what is synthetic or added. See, in relationships, we have a lot of synthetic inputs, man-made traditions, different laws, all these different things, and we're totally displaced from the basic natural energetic flows that come from our souls. And so what happens is we build these structures around these synthetic inputs, and then when they start failing, we try to go to synthetic input and look to try to fix it, but you can't fix the very thing of what is of and expect to get a different result. It is of what is of. So we have to look outside of synthetic input and look at what is more permanent, more reliable. As y'all know, that's where the universal laws and principles come into play. Now, why don't we hear a lot of people talking about this? Because it requires a total different mindset. It requires a different level of self-evaluation, mirror work, uh, changing and eradicating, admitting different stuff, and what disrupting our comfortability, and that's inconvenient. We want convenience. So in the day, it's a more we're going to continue to pattern even to our own destruction, even to our own sabotage, to defend a synthetic input. But the reality is, most relationships are in synthetic inputs, as we see in percent, are failing. Why? Synthetic means it's not real. It's not real. So what's happening now is that we're trying to get back to the soul, to what's really real, and fashion our relationships around that, right? Before we, so in this, so the soul elements helps us to move in this different direction by understanding what our soul profiles are, so we can begin to what fashion and curate a soul-based type of dynamic and relating with each other that becomes a little more comfortable, right? A little more, without us feeling I gotta sacrifice myself. Uh, I gotta compromise myself. You don't have to compromise yourself. It's about how do we resonate. Or if you have certain aspect for somebody, well, I'm not going to elevate you in a place in my life because we only resonate here. Okay, so back to this couple. Okay, so 4454 is him, 4825 is her. This is a very feminine driven relationship dynamic energetically, and he has a lot of feminine alignments. Okay, and the masculine is minuscule in their collective soul profile. Okay, then they have a little bit of androgyny in there. So just off the rip, looking at this, I didn't go in detailing and nerd out on the scores and the polarity scores, but just looking at it just from the eye and just from experience, their polarity is kind of fractured. So even though the relationship has a strong compatibility, they show aspects of the connectivity and things like that, but in their dynamic, they probably, well, I'm looking at it just to be honest with y'all. If y'all paid attention, you probably, and I know it's probably because y'all some things shared. This is why you hit waves of stagnation, or it seems like y'all get these waves of thing like there's no spark, and you start trying to question each other. Don't question each other, okay? Because then what happens? You start offending each other. You don't need to do that. Understand y'all's relationship dynamic. The energy set up with y'all is that because you have a lot of neutral position, y'all naturally just default and just kind of that flow, like, hey, whatever goes, goes. And that's cool in y'all's dynamic. But if you keep pivoting there, then there's like no spark because you're allowing whatever to happen. So there's going to be points where y'all going to have to take in your own language, in your own lead, and because you're more feminine, so you have to initiate different things instead of being primarily in the neutral mindset because there's no spark. There's a lot of sameness. There's a lot of allowance. All right. So what you need to do is like the feminine oriented is like let's build some collecting, some closeness activities. So you can initiate closeness activities. Y'all really don't need what a venture, like someone that might be more masculine down. Oh, let's go do this. From the feminine aspect is let's do some let's do some intentional set cuddle time, right? Cuddly, you know what I'm saying? That's feminine, nothing wrong with it, or that's have some time to really just allow us to breathe into each other emotionally. Just so it's a different orientation that you have to use and implement to give charge to your relationship battery. And because you don't have any, you have a low score in the masculine, you're going to learn how to tap into your androgynous which is a combination from the masculine, and tap into your feminine or tap into these positions to figure out how to work it. But today, this morning, we're going to look at the soul element aspect of it. Okay. So I know I just gave y'all a whole layered view of one thing. Let me know if you're still tracking. So we're looking at the soul elements. So in this relationship dynamic, now we already know they're highly feminine and it's highly neutral driven. So it's a feminine neutral driven relationship. Inside the living soul numerology system, that equates to what we refer to as the energy archetype when we call it the soul lover. So yes, and the love style in that collectively is the Eros love style, which means they love a lot of touch. So they don't need to feel bad because of the touch and all that. That is the overarching energy that governs and moves their dynamic together. Now, some are like, well, I want that. I want that. Well, honey, you might not have that depending on the connection of the combination of your numbers. So don't hear this and be like, yeah, and get your man and try to put him on, like, listen to him, what he's saying. Or, the brother be like, hey, man, no, 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 no. This is based off of their energetic combination, their mix that comes together, okay? So they just have a strong touch base driven, well, it should be. If y'all not touching, or you feel bad with touching, stop it. That's what y'all need to do. This is a part of y'all's, that's y'all's energetic flow. Y'all have a strong, your relationship is governed by the Eros love style. Now, inside Living Soul numerology system, we have 9 different love styles. Okay, not gonna go over that today, but that's what they're going on. So they operate up under the Eros love style. Okay, and I mean that's on strong. That's on that's on fleek right there. So now when we look at the elements, the element that they score very low in is the metal. The element that they score very high in is very dominant in their relationship setup is actually the water and the air. Um, the element that falls in a moderate, but it's pretty strong, is the fire. So their relationship really centers, primarily on in the giving and receiving and exchange, strongly from the air element and from the water element, and the fire is not too far behind it. Okay, and so when you look at this just gives us a basic elemental profile, if you will, to give us some understanding about what's likely to be exchanging a relationship or what the relationship might need, what is strong to keep it sustainable, or what the nemesis might be that can shift your relationship. So we're looking at right here, as I mentioned, they score very low in the metal together. Okay, as a matter of fact, his score doesn't have any metal. So he doesn't even come from he's absent of that in his element. So this is more than likely where there are any friction, tension, imbalances, or challenges and things like that in a relationship will come from. Its likelihood is going to come from the metal aspect. And then their earthwood is also has a low score as well too. So just looking at this real quick from the numbers, is the earthwood and the metal are they're probably going to be their Achilles heel in the exchange versus strength versus weaknesses. Okay, and so if their weaknesses in a relationship is going to be pulled more likely from the metal and from the earthwood influence from the lack thereof in their mix. Okay, so someone said put me on your calendar. Yes, got you. Okay, so when you look at that, all right, so it's like, wow, so how's that look? First, let's talk about the air. And I want to share, I've been wanting to talk about this. The air element, when you think about it, communicative, And some people, and this is why we gotta get this is and check vibe with me, y'all. This is why we have to mature. This is why we have to bring a different uh universal, practical, relevant based type of language into the relationship space because we might be getting offended by people by things and it's not really them being malicious or them having ulterior motives or ill intent. It's just their energetic position. Somebody with a lot of air, they need a lot of space, but at the same time they need a lot of mental stimulation. Okay, so if you're someone that's more water and you have more of this clinging need, there might be parts where that air just like I'm not, what I'm saying, I don't need all that. You cramping my space. And then if you look at their androgen score, they got strong androgen score along with their strong air. You definitely know they need that for them to feel solid, for them to feel at home with whoever they are exchanging love with, right? Okay, so we have to think about that. So that means that every relationship that you are in and out of is going to look different if your alignments are different. So the question comes down to, are you adaptable enough or everything has to be pinholed into how you think a relationship should be? Now I will say this. So a lot of people that has a strong metal orientation, when I sit down and talk with them, a lot of times they think every relationship should be in a certain predictable way, how they really see it. And so they struggle when they find themselves working with people or trying to vibe with people that has a lot of air and a lot of water. That's going to birth a challenge. It don't mean the relationship can't work. It just means you got to step back. We got to look at, okay, what's really going on here? You know what I'm saying? To really understand each other. Okay. And so this is where the nuances kick in because human behavior is nuance. And so we try to capture those nuances in the system to help people understand and work and move through. So the end of the day is a lot of times relationships don't have to cancel out. We just have to find out what the flexibility points are. And I'm not saying you allow anything goes on that don't fit you, but we have to understand a lot of these different dynamics. There's a lot of different dynamics just being like, oh, you look nice. Oh, the sex is cool. Or there's a lot more other stuff going on energetically that's going to keep and hold a relationship to be in a high endurance state. Not unless you're just interested in short term stints. And looking at their numbers, a lot of fours, they might benefit for having moving in ways of short stints with each other, still connected. See, people are like, what? Still connected, still with each other, but because you have a lot of this air, and because looking at your fours are very strong, if y'all start hitting these patches where you're getting frustrated with each other because y'all are weak in the metal, so naturally y'all can probably confuse y'all's role to each other. And also you might start acting out that way. So your relationship might require, we're still together, but do we need periods where we move away from each other and then come back to each other? Because why? Because the air is very strong in their setup. You follow what I'm saying? And then they have a lot of water in this case, right? So one part is we desire all this closeness. So what's it telling us? So this relationship dynamic is, and y'all know if you read my book, See Your Lover, I often always quote in your human workshop, separateness leads to togetherness. Separateness leads to togetherness. A lot of times we do in relationships, we do the opposite. We begin to clip people's separateness. In other words, their individuality. Make it bend and fall to what I need to expect. And then, quote unquote, trying to make it be y'all's togetherness. But someone is losing parts of themselves because they're trying to sacrifice or compromise. That's why I don't like using the word compromise when I talk about relationships, when I'm coaching, when I'm consulting, because I'm more about interplay and counterbalancing. And some can get with it and some might not, and that's fine. But you don't have to compromise who you are for a relationship dynamic. I think a lot of us can relate to that because most people on here are mature and the grown and sexy crowd. So you already know what that's going to turn out to look like for man or woman. Yeah, 10 years make an impact. Yeah. Uh, so you get what I'm saying? So get this orientation that I gotta compromise myself in a relationship. You don't have to. That lets me know you have weak resonance. It means you're focused on, more of the attraction, more of the ideal, or more of the optics. You get what I'm saying? You're missing it. If you want more insight, side note, the book that's been people's been vibing with, Activate Your Lover. You need to grab that off my Patreon. It gives some insight into what I'm talking about right here. If you want more insight, this is stuff is just it's game changer. One way we can start spreading this message is invite people to get the book. Go to Living Soul, go to Patreon, Living Soul, and go to my shop and go scroll and get Activate. Your lover. Relating in resonance. Okay. And so this is what we got going on. So in this case right here, their numbers are 4454, 4825, and they have a lot of air score. They have a lot of air and water. So they have this interesting dynamic where they where they need space, they need intellectual stimulation, they also need intuitive closeness and vulnerability. I'm like, well, how does that mix? Well, they can flow with it because that's their mix. That's their mix. That is their energetic language for them to flow based off of looking at just the elements right there, and I actually have, like a quick report that, just people so they can see what that score looks like, oh wow, and it kind of gives you like, oh, this is part of y'all's dynamic that holds a lot of weight. So when you look at it, okay, so like I said, water is high, air is high, and fire is not too far. Fire, motivation. So there's a lot of partner relationship dynamic where they motivate each other. How do we motivate each other? There's a lot of high passion, right? So looking at the number, I said their relationship is obviously governed by the soul lover, is eros touch. So the sexual chemistry is definitely strong and high, and it should be, and that is their superpower inside their relationship. Everybody, well, that should be everybody's. Well, not necessarily. Some people are not. That's not what stimulates and drives a relationship. But in this case, it does. Now, if someone's in the shadow and they're like, well, all you really want from me is sex and all this other stuff, and you put all this rigid, well, I got it. The tone got to be right to have sex. You don't fit in that type of dynamic. So you're listening to someone and you're on the outside like, well, I can't get with it. Well, you probably can't because you don't match that. You got to think about it. They got weak metal, so they don't have all these definitions floating in their head and all these standards or these expectations and all these routines or certain times to do whatever. They just are very spontaneous and flow, which is the nature of sexual energy. So they have the spontaneity thing where someone else might need predictability, timing, or, oh, we've been at it for 20 minutes. Are you done yet? All that. That's not their dynamic. Their dynamic is they're fully enraptured in each other in high touch relationship dynamic. But the same time it's not dismissing the intellectual compatibility. It actually stimulates their sexual energy because of intellectual stimulation, because they love that level of communication, and it just makes them just tap more into their eros love style. You get what I'm saying? So they have that. So when you look at it, when you look at the high, high air score, high communication, effective communication, you need space, mental compatibility, a lot of humor. They probably have a lot of inside jokes, as you should, right? There's a lot of flexibility, so there's a lot of level, it allows winds, like the wind, a lot of winds of spontaneity to flow in their relationship. So they actually thrive on unpredictability. But at the same time is they need an aspect of predictability because they have low metal, because their nemesis can be because they're so fluid. I hope y'all are hearing me. Because you're so fluid. And it's a very strong issue because when you think about earthwood and metal, those are two stabilizing elements. So they score low in both of them. This is why I said they don't be shocked if y'all have this dynamic or you need this dynamic where you have these short stints of closeness and then you have certain stints of separateness. Some people call it, there's a phrase called LAT, living apart together. Or you definitely see that people are a little more mature, those of us is like around 50, empty nesting and, and things like that. And you already did it all. You're in a different gear in life. You're more about your purpose, whatever it is. But living apart together really fits very well for this couple right here. So if you find yourself like we should move in together, and all of a sudden it's like you got all this clashing going on, and he's like, but we're better off when we're separate. That's because you need space. Free therapy right there. Someone's catching this. I just helped about several thousand people with that one right there. It might look different. It might look unconventional, but this is funny because the number 4 represents unconventionality. You don't have a conventional mindset in this relationship case study that I'm looking at right here. It's very unconventional. Okay? Very unconventional. So they thrive on living apart but together. That don't make sense to me. I can't get with that. It's not for you then. It's not your energetic signature. It's not your core energetic nutrient that you need to give you the balance and the vitality in your relationship. It just ain't you. But some of us, we rock with that. It makes sense. And it's more just a trendy emotion about it. We like, oh, that's my answer. I'm at home with that. And guess what? You get more from that person. You draw more from that person. You're like, oh, we feel more closer. Why? Because we have separateness. We have the living apart together is our secret glue. It's our sacred intimacy. So when we are together, it's all good. You know what I'm saying? And y'all, the countless of profiles I looked at, and it's a very beautiful, liberating thing when I sit with, couples and all kinds of different dynamics, and they begin to look at these numbers. Like, let's take away our bias, let's take away what we've been thought, what we think, and let's just look at the numbers, look at it energetically, and be true with yourself, and let me know if you resonate with certain attributes that comes from these numbers. And it's interesting. They're like, oh my God, yeah. So you're trying to force someone to be in a more devotional love style, but that's not even aligned with your numbers. You need fluidity. You need spontaneity. You need the high level of unpredictability because the unpredictability to you is actually more predictable. Yes. All right. So the high water, let's realize is they refer to high intuitive closeness. Now I want to check this out, right, everybody. When we talk about high water, and those of you that are in my Patreon community, I'm going to do a little series breaking these things down more in detail, and be doing some deep dives, workshops, and even people that's on the outside that want to, we're gonna tap in, but people that's looking, you gotta be a member because you're not gonna get all this shit for free. I'm just gonna be honest with you on that shit, okay? But anyways, but the water, check this out. The high water lets us realize there's an atmosphere that they need that centers around the we and us mindset versus the I and me. The we and us factor. And I've been, in relationships, and it's very interesting seeing people like, I don't know what's going on. Well, if someone has a lot of water score, they're very mindful of you more than you realize. But if you're someone that's very metal oriented, right, and fire oriented, you might not realize it, but in your language, unconsciously, you speak of I and me more versus the we and us. And so if that we and us intentional language is not there, it will make someone with a strong water score start to feel displaced or disconnected. The high water indicates I don't care how much air we got, I don't care how much space that we got. I just need to know if we're still connected. And I know that we're connected by the atmosphere when you and I are exchanging, when there's an energetic language that's saying we and us. As long as I know the we and us is there, I'm not frazzled. I'm not sitting there questioning anything. But if your language is I and me, and I start seeing things shifting, then I know underneath it all that you're liable, high likelihood to change the dynamic relationship or cancel the relationship. And so they start to what? Reposition themselves. And this happens all the time. Some people are playing this game, but well, let me get out the relationship first before they cancel me and all this other dynamic. This is why you gotta look at the elements. It helps out. And you're like, oh my God, a lot of people with that high water, that we and us. And I've been in a scenario where people try to fake it. Like, no, I'm all about we and us. No, you're not. No, you're not. It's not about a right or wrong thing. Just know you're not. But somebody with that water and the air, put it like this: relationship dynamics that requires a level of fluidity, they're not caught up in definitions. They don't need you to have a contractual understanding of what we are to each other. They're heart-based. They're like, no, I know we are for each other. We have a level of rooting within each other, whether dynamic relationship it is, whether it's monogamous, polygamous, whatever. At the heart level and the soul level, they understand a certain language between them is the we and us. And then when they visit that we know what, that's changed the we and us, then they will do that through their air. But it will look unconventional, especially in this case right here, because it has an unconventional type of vibe to it anyways. Just embrace what y'all's energy allows in your space. Just embrace what your energy allows in its space. And some people are like, well, how can you speak all like this? I'm speaking from a very universal aspect and looking at these numbers and understanding the psychological profiles behind these numbers and everything, etc. It's not based upon how I see how it fits my personal dynamic. It ain't about me. This is their dynamic. Dare to look at that. You see what I'm saying? So don't get caught up in something. Oh, that sounds nice, but then your energetic alignment doesn't complement that. Can you get there? Yeah, but you have to work more harder at it. But you also got to understand what people, the mode that people really are in. You know what I'm saying? There's a freedom love style that some of us operate in. We need that sense of freedom. It feels like it's being encroached on. You get a different part of us. Some people need that high definition, high understanding for them to, so there's a lot there. The problem is it the extreme? Where can you find the balancing part at? The counterbalance, not compromise. I don't need you to compromise because you need this and this and this. I ain't doing that. If it's in the flow of the rhythm and how we move, and it just naturally just flows in and out of dominant, neutral, and all this other kind of stuff without jeopardizing who we really are, and hey, then it's all good. It's all jelly. You know what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying? So, hold on, let me see. Someone says my energetic alignment. Don't comment there. Now, understand something, a detail. Someone said something. If you have extreme in an element, then the very thing that don't complement actually does complement. So, for example, if someone has strong metal, then there's a part in them where they actually become more flexible because the polarity part in the element, if it's an extreme metal, then it can kick over. I know I've been picking on the metal today. Then it can kick over where they are very open and very flexible. So they can dance in between those type of scenarios, right? It just depends what the pull is on what is known, what is defined, and what is expected. Because I'll give you a good example. When we talk about dominant and we talk about um, the dominant masculine, it draws to a lot of air. It draws to a lot of water, and it draws to a lot of earth. So it's not like it can't get with um, people that are not primarily structured in their orientation and relationship dynamic. Their structure looks different. They have they trust your heart. Yeah. And some of y'all trust your rules. Some of you are trusting your expectations. And so it throws your mind off when someone trusts your heart or distrusts your heart. Okay. So all these things are really constantly, really, really being at play. Okay. So with that water, they need that atmosphere of the we and us. Okay. And that relationship needs active listening. So people with a lot of air. So I know in this relationship right here, the strong air and the strong water, there's a need for a lot of active listening. They love communication, but can you shut the hell up? So in other words, they probably have a natural rhythm where they set the tone where and it's let one lover just be able to express and they just chilling. And the other ones are getting offended. It's like, oh, I did, sometimes human relationship, you're like, oh my God, I feel like I'm talking forever. And that lover's like, no, you cool. What are they doing? Active listening. And I probably don't realize is actually that's what you need, part of your love style inside your love dynamic. I need to be able to open up the communication container. I might ask two questions. All of a sudden you might just run with all kinds of stuff you gotta say. Because you're highly mentally stimulated. And you might have all these different ideas that you might not be able to really get out because you've just been processing things differently. I ain't talking the bad space. Like, people with a lot of air score, it's different. They got a lot of creativity. They might be philosophical. They might be, very technical, just looking at things and they just kind of they might be introverted with it. But their lover has a way to kind of just open up and they just start spilling all the beans. And they start talking for 2 hours straight. Like, oh, I got this right here, this right here. And some of your dynamics, you ever have a lover like y'all try to put a time limit on your on your on your communication. Like, okay, we're gonna talk for this period of time and then do it. But every time you do that, you keep just talking forever. That's why, because there's an element inside that air and that water vibe where the act of listening is such a very powerful and it's such a necessary ingredient in relationships, especially people with a lot of earth, with a lot of air and a lot of water. They need that. They don't know. They're not, and they probably never communicate that. But when it's there, it just gets them going like, oh my God, because they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel connected. They feel very connected. This is why they can go LAT. Well, y'all not hearing me today. This is why they can go on these short stints with each other. And they seem like they're stronger than ever because they have this active listening thing. So when they are together, the fire is nurturing, the water is nurturing, the air is nurturing. They literally are what they need for each other. It just might be unconventional, and it's okay. One of my favorite songs, old neo soul groove that people slept on. It's by Jazzy Fat Nasty, and it's called Unconventional Ways. Y'all need to go check that joint out. That joint that's my joint. Didn't understand back when it came out with it, that I was like, oh, that aligns with me. But anyways, um, okay. So that's what they got going on. Now let's talk about the fire. Even though the fire is not as high as their water and their air, their fire is not too far behind. So that fire, they gotta have that chemistry. It's gotta be that it. You know what I'm saying? Just someone he's like every time you're around, he's like, man, it's just, yo, we just vibe well. And it's cool. That's what your soul's resonating with. So the fire really gives an indication of just that strong high resonance. So they got a strong resonance with each other. They got some, they got some little polarity signal issues, but overall, there's different other things that they work with that's got things going on. The chemistry, the sexual connection, the motivational spark. I want to speak on that. Because sometimes when you get with some people, all of a sudden the motivational spark just gets amplified. Boom. You just start making things happen. All of a sudden you start thinking more things. You start getting more inventive. Because their presence sparks a motivational spark. Then the opposite can happen. Someone can demotivate, right? So you need this. But I want to bring this out when you have a lot of fire in your relationship dynamic, especially for this couple right here. Y'all need a high need for forgiveness and patience. And some of y'all know when we talking about love, there's no love without forgiveness. There's no love without truth. Love is patient. So with the high fire, because just that moment, they not realizing, but they need to be in relationship containers where they're allowed to make mistakes. Now, I don't need y'all trauma-centric people hopping on here talking about, oh, they doing this. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm too mature for that. Where you're not so anal, where you're not so everything has to be accurate and perfect. And this is where I'm gonna pick on the metal people, and the earth people, because the metal and earth can get so strong and disciplined, because those are very disciplined elements too. All right. Except for the metal has a little less flexibility than the earth. The earth has more flexibility in it, but they both can get very routine and very, very centered, which is necessary, which is needed, which is great indicators when we look at the relationship endurance score. When I pull those metrics, those have a lot of weight in those metrics and those calculations. But so that fire, if you're metal oriented, sometimes, and you also got a lot of fire, you start working this inner conflict because everything's got to be perfect, but then you don't know how to get over shit. I'm gonna talk to some people today. I can feel it right now. So let me speak to this. So, like, there's one archetype that has the fire and the metal in there together. There's a couple of archetypes that has the fire and the metal together. So, for example, if you got the number 7 and the number 3 and the 8, it has the fire and the metal in there. But at the same time, it could be the very thing that's problematic if you don't have forgiveness and patience. That makes sense. You think about it, right? If I got a lot of metal, I need patience when things are not going to plan. Now, what's that? Realize if you low score metal, as y'all are listening right here, they got low score of metal and earthwood. It lets you realize that y'all got to make sure that you don't allow your impatience to creep in, to blur what you are to each other. Okay. So all these things are constantly working from the soul elements. All right. So I wanted to just highlight that today. Hopefully, y'all got something out of this. If you got anything, comments, or questions, I'll look at this after before I close out. But again, so in this minor case study right here, his soul numbers were 4454, hers was 4825. Very feminine oriented, very neutral position, very eros love style touch type relationship. But when we look at the elements in terms of the operation of them, they operate primarily a lot from the air, water, and fire in terms of the giving and receiving to each other naturally, what their behavior is going to align with. When we look at what might starve this relationship, what starves this relationship model right here is the metal and the earth. So routine structure. So they might be so free. Because some people get like, oh, we so free. We don't want no definition. So you're in the extreme. And then you forget what you are to each other. Well, you need to understand what the we is, right? So that way, and y'all can flow from that. Okay. So let's look at this. Let's see right here. So yeah, so um we will be getting more into this, especially like so some of y'all that really you find this informative, you might find it different, but it's like it's confirming, vibe with me on Patreon. So you go to Patreon, www.patreon.com, put slash living soul, or just Google that living soul and become a member. We got the soul vibe, numerology level. We have the audio soul sanctuary and the living soul discovery. Depend on what you really want, what you really need, really get from this. We're just, we're thriving steady, and building things. And I can say um, one of the central focus is just edification, help to build each other, help us to create a space where you can self navigate, um, a an audio library, a level of information, different things for you to elevate yourself, in a variety of different areas. So I touch areas of dealing with money, things dealing with interpersonal relationships, self mastery. So there's a lot of different things that I cover. Full. It's a whole system. And one thing I will let you know, I'm looking forward to do physical meetup, living soul discovery tours and things like that. Really get into some of these things right here. I get people asking stuff, but it's still kind of spread out, so it's hard for me to see see it a pinpoint to try to spark some of these physical meetups where it makes sense for everyone. Or, but it's all coming. But in the meanwhile, we do virtual meetups and things like that. So definitely check out here. Definitely subscribe to my channel right here on YouTube so you can get the notifications as I talk more about the soul to soul conversations in this. So we're just tapping more into this relationship numerology thing. It's time to change the whole orientation. I don't know about y'all, but I'm kind of tired hearing, you know, immature, unseasoned, or people that has no uh, rooted or really true experience, really in relationships, to and they're not coming from um, a solid system that's that can help you filter out their opinion or their bias from what they're breaking down. Okay. We're all human, so we all can be liable to do that. But you need a system, you need something high, you need something to help police that, so you can give people true things that they can really draw from. So hopefully that's what you're getting from here. Um, so again, I was hitting on the relationship elements and so forth. Let's see what we got going on here. So that's what's up. This will be available on here. Like I said, feel free to share it. Appreciate everybody chiming in, and we'll touch back down with more. Oh, grab my. I got several books, but the two books you need to get. Um, because some of you are probably hearing this, some of the language and the angles that I'm talking about. You need to get activate your lover. You need to get relationship battery. It will do you a lot of service. If you're trying to think outside the box and you want a more spiritual, metaphysical, practical sense to view relationships, you get those two books and then get See Your Lover to help give you a map of how to flow and operate. All right. Um, Actually, prior to today, give you a heads up. I'm actually going to release the book. I do know this for a fact. It's been over a couple of years. People are interested in the additional insights into about the gender energies, the masculine, androgynous, and feminine energies, and how that flows and moves within ourselves and relationships. So I'm actually going to be dropping the psychology of feminine energy, the four spectrums. That'll probably be released later on this evening. Um, Interesting. And when I say feminine energy, that's just for women. It is for men. Like I just matter of fact, in this case study is right here, he doesn't he doesn't even have a masculine score. So he's primarily operating in the feminine psychology, the energetic aspect of feminine psychology. What does that look like? What can you understand about that? Right? The mind is the root to all conduct. So the psychology of us dictates what we are in relationships, how we are. So if you want to get decent insight about relationships, you definitely understand the energetic psychology that's driving it. Just saying. All right. So it will suit you and benefit you to vibe with me on Patreon because all this stuff is not going to be shared on YouTube. All right. So that's what's up. Hey, one love. We pat back down.